Well, ever since it was announced that the Russo brothers were indeed going to take on Secret Wars, well, they've been pretty tight-lipped. But now they sat down with Empire magazine and gave us a little bit of a peek on why they decided to do this project and what brought them back into the fold. Let's take a couple minutes to break down that interview, talk about what the Russos had to say, and why this is probably the best news Marvel Studios has brought us in a long time. Well, if you're a fan of this channel, you know for a long time I have been advocating for the Russo brothers to take on Secret Wars. The movie was clearly on the horizon for a really long time, and the success that was Infinity War and Endgame has been unparalleled in almost any other superhero movie ever. The Russos seem to have a special talent for bringing these characters together in a way that, well, quite honestly, doesn't really work for some other directors. So when we found out they were indeed coming back at this year's Comic-Con, well, I was one of those people that was super excited. Now, in case you didn't know, they will indeed be directing Doomsday and Secret Wars, and I expect this once again to be one of those 1-2 punches that we got just like in Infinity War and Endgame. Expect a big cliffhanger. Now, to be fair, the Russo brothers seemed like they were pretty much done with the MCU after Endgame. They moved on to focus on their Agbo production label where they did Cherry and the Gray Man, which quite honestly struggled to resonate with audiences. And although I like what I see from the Electric State, I'm not expecting this film to do very well either. Now, the directing duo has not really given us much information on what's gone on to bring them back to this point, but recently they were talking to Empire magazine and both Anthony and Joe had quite a bit to say. Now, in the interview, Anthony Russo said, and I quote, "Endgame was the end, and it took a little time for us to begin to think about it as something other than an end. We're very close with Kevin and Lou and the entire Marvel team, and we've had conversations through the years. We've talked about a lot of ideas. Really, what happened was we ended up stumbling upon an idea that activated all of us. You couldn't see it coming until it came, and once it came, it was like, well, that's a story we need to tell." Now, just as a little bit of a peek behind the scenes, the original films were written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, but this time Marcus is going to keep projects running over at Agbo, but McFeely will reunite with the Russos as the sole writer for Doomsday and Secret Wars. So we really are bringing back most of the original team. Now, in that same interview, Joe Russo actually recalled, and I quote, "There were ideas that we were trying to wrap our heads around, and that preceded this one, and we just never found the story. I remember calling Steve and saying, hey, crazy idea, what do you think if we go back and do Secret Wars?" And they were like, F no, absolutely not. And then you hung up, and the next morning at 7:30, you called and were like, alright, I have an idea. So based on this conversation, it seems like the trio really did come up with an idea at the last moment, so this really does appear to be the actual origin of how the MCU greats really did find their way back into the Marvel Universe. Now, they have a huge history of success collaborating on Captain America and the Avengers, and it does feel like Marvel has put these movies in very safe hands. I know some people kind of wanted new directors to put a fresh spin on this, but quite honestly, Disney and Marvel Studios really need these movies to be the critical and commercial successes that the previous two Avengers films nailed. Now, what's great is the Russo brothers are massive fans of the original Secret Wars comics, and while Robert Downey Jr.'s MCU return as Doctor Doom has kind of raised some eyebrows, it sounds like they've dreamed up a really interesting adaptation that gets them pretty excited, and I feel pretty confident this will end the multiverse on a high note. Now, Avengers Doomsday will go into production this year and is set to release in May of 2026, with Secret Wars arriving about a year later. Like I said, I fully expect this to be a cliffhanger event at the end of Doomsday, probably with Doctor Doom forming Battleworld and leaving us with a very different look at the Marvel Universe. Now, what they do with Secret Wars, well, that's completely up in the air. It feels like to me this is more than likely will be heavily influenced by the 2015 version of the event and not the 1980s. The 2015 version saw lots of variants converging on Battleworld and would definitely take advantage of all this multiverse expansion Marvel has been doing over the last couple of years. I do expect a unique tale from the Russos. This definitely isn't going to be panel for panel or the exact story that we saw in the original Secret Wars or the 2015 version. It seems to me right now we might be looking at some evil version of the Avengers, and with Robert Downey Jr. taking up the role of a variant Doctor Doom, who knows what direction they're going to take this story in. I fully expect not only Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans to return, those have been confirmed, but many other familiar faces, including Scarlett Johansson. And whatever the Russos give us for Secret Wars, it's definitely going to set up a mega future for their Marvel Universe that will probably include a cohesive Marvel world integrating not only the original MCU, but the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and other tidbits of the Marvel Universe that might have been long forgotten. The Russo brothers are absolutely perfect for this film. They know the Marvel Universe, they love the content, and they know how to strike those emotional chords with fans. Their previous time with Marvel marks some of the best films Marvel's ever made, so I have high expectations for their return, and hopefully they deliver and then some. Now, before you take off, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, ring that bell for all the updates, and make sure you get every notification because we do daily Marvel and DC content and we don't want you to miss any news.